Welcome back to another episode of Grieving and Growing. I am your host, Lakeisha Rawls, and I'm joined by our co-host, Denisha Rawls Smith. And we are so excited to have you back for another episode. How you doing, sis?
I'm doing well. How are you tonight?
I'm doing well. I am excited about this episode. I've been waiting to film this one because I feel like it's going to be so helpful for our audience. Tonight, we're going to be talking about what we have coined as our grieving and growing SHEROES. And so we have done a lot of sharing our own personal stories, the stories of our loved ones, of how they are grieving and growing. But we know that we're not the only ones in this space. And there are many people who are in the media, who are a part of the culture, that are experiencing this very thing. And the ladies that we're going to talk about tonight are just a true example of there is joy on the other side of this thing. So I'm going to jump right into it, sis. I hope you're okay with that because I'm so excited about it. My grieving and growing SHEROE is April Daniels. And so some of you may know April as a television personality. She is also an entrepreneur. She has a cosmetology license, which is what brought her out to Los Angeles, California many years ago. She would do hairstyling for some of the, most famous people in the industry. And she is also the widow of LaShawn Daniels, who many are familiar with. LaShawn is an American songwriter, Grammy Award winning songwriter, music producer. He worked with the likes of Destiny Child, and he lost his life in a tragic car accident in September of 2019. And so since that time, Mrs. April Daniels has just, been very, I would say, just transparent with how his death affected her, but also I feel like her story just exemplifies the love that God has for us as his children. And you can just see his hand all over her life. I've listened to some interviews that she's done. I think the first interview I personally saw that kind of drew me into her story was her interview with Pastor Sarah Jakes Roberts on Woman Evolve. And she was just talking about the passing of her husband and how she was getting through that and how she was, taking it day by day and the things that she was doing to get through it. And then most recently, I saw an interview that she did with a magazine on the YouTube channel of a magazine. And she talked about some of the things that she was doing that I thought would be helpful to share. One was when her husband passed, she did a video. She videotaped herself daily just to, kind of capture the space that she was in with her grief. And she said it also helped that during the times where she felt like God was distant, and she would look at that and just be reminded about, where she wanted to go. And when and she also talks about how she didn't get angry with God. She had experienced some things when she had originally moved out to California with her husband that had caused distance between her and God. And she had addressed that and, strengthened her relationship with the Father. And so when her husband passed away, she knew she did not want to go back to being upset with God. And I was just blown away by that. Just, the courage, the commitment to just staying in faith. Not to say that she wasn't hurt, not to say that she wasn't sad, but she really focused on, helping people. During her season of grief, she was looking at how she could help others. And to me, that was just so admirable of her. She has 3 sons, if I'm getting that right. And so she talks about, really wanting to make sure that they saw her the way that she wanted them to, work through their grief. She wanted to be a model for them. Yeah. But she also acknowledged the fact that she had to take care of herself also. Like she had to make sure she was okay so she could make sure her sons were okay as well. And so her story of just grieving and growing, has just personally for me, it's given me a lot to think about. How do we get to the other side of grief without being mad at God or finding some other purpose? How can I make sure I'm helping people while, I'm still, helping myself as well. So April Daniels to me is just like just the epitome of what, a believer, a Christian woman, and the shero in this space is. I admire what she's been able to do. And so she has different health and beauty line that's come out. She has 3 different clothing lines. She just recently launched a new seasonal line. So she's just really just out doing all of the things. And then if you see her on Instagram, like just absolutely gorgeous inside and out, and does not look like what she's been through. You talking about, like I tell you, like I said before, just truly, truly, truly exemplifying what joy can look like on the other side of this thing. And she acknowledges, being lonely. She acknowledges all those things. So she's not making it seem like it's perfect or it's easy, but she's committed to, helping people. And because of that, all these other things are happening and she's doing. In that interview, she also shared that she's drafting a book. And she's talking about how, she's in the process of writing that book, and, how she had started off writing in a different space. And, she's had to write it a couple times, like different drafts, but now she feels like, she's closer to that, that final draft. And so it's just been amazing to watch her journey and encouraging to me personally, and wouldn't dare compare the loss that I've experienced to her loss of her spouse, for so many years, because they were married in 2001 and she lost him in 2019. So, can't imagine what that pain is to lose a spouse. But when I tell you she is doing the dang on thing, like just truly being a shero in her own right, it's been amazing to see. So yes, Mrs. April Daniels, that is my grieving and growing shero. What about who's inspiring you or encouraging you through their own journey in this season?
It's Mrs. Vanessa Bryant. Similar to your grieving and growing shero, she also lost her husband. She is a philanthropist. She's a businesswoman. She's a model, but she's also the widow of the late and great American basketball player, Kobe Bryant. Everybody knows Kobe. Together they have 4 beautiful children. And unfortunately, when she lost her husband, she also lost her daughter. This woman, just what she's done in the midst of her grief is what makes her my shero. She continues to enhance the lives of the youth through the Mamba and Mambacita Sports Foundation. She carries on, Kobe and the Vanessa Bryant Foundation that provides scholarships to minority college students. She is the president and chief executive officer of Granity Studios and a member of the board of directors for Body Armor, the super drink. So this is a woman that is, in spite of grief, is yet building, coveting her husband's legacy, creating future and opportunities for not only her children, but the children of others. She's strong, and I think when I consider her story and even the way she found out about her husband's passing on social media, tributes to her husband, and then the sharing of photos of his remains and her daughter's remains, to have to deal with all of that and yet still show up in the world, because the media, it doesn't care that you're grieving. Pictures are still being taken, stories are still being told. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I feel like she's a person that has stood in the strength of being a woman and being a mother, being that protector of her girls. She gave a beautiful eulogy for her husband. So I think I admire her strength and her tenacity. Mm-hmm. I see her eldest daughter modeling and doing other things, and the way she supports all of her girls. Mm-hmm. I love how she still shares Kobe with the world through her social media platforms, understanding that he was her husband, the father of her children, but he meant so much to so many. And even in her grief, she yet shares her life, shares his life, shares the lives of her children. A lot of us, including myself, probably would curl up in a ball and just hide for years. But she lost her husband. She lived through a pandemic, mm-hmm. and she still showed up in this world for her babies, for our babies, you know, for all those that admire her and her husband and their family. You know, I think that's what it is for me, is her strength. Mm-hmm. And it's the legacy that she continues to build and provide, you know, for their family. She was just 17 when she married Kobe. He was 21. And, you know, it's interesting because she was married in 2001 as well. And she lost him in 2020. So, you know, they were on their way to 20 years of marriage. And it's just phenomenal to have that type of life with someone. And similar to your Shero, it was a tragic event, you know? It was a tragic helicopter accident that caused her to lose her husband. And I mean, this woman is grace under fire. Yeah. This woman is walking through the valley of the shadow of death. I mean, and yet she is showing up fearless. And if she's not fearless, she's conveying the type of courage that makes you believe that she's not fearless. Mm-hmm. I mean, she had to take on a lawsuit because of the things that were done. Yeah. You know, and so it's her strength. Mm-hmm. You know, and I feel that sometimes we deal with hard things as women in grieving. And what she's showing the world is that we can do hard things. Mm-hmm. She is, I mean, quintessentially the message, the epitome of we can do hard things. Yeah. And she doesn't pretend that it's happiness all the time. Mm-hmm. But I agree with what you're saying about joy. Mm-hmm. There is an unspeakable joy that's in this lady's smile. It's in her eyes. It's in the way that she looks at her children and the way she honors her husband. Mm-hmm. And so I really admire that about her.
Mm-hmm. It's funny that you talk about the children, because I feel like that is probably what people know most about April Daniels. Is she went viral for there was a video of her kind of standing over the shoulder of one of her sons as they were reviewing their results from the bar exam.
Right.
And he passed, of course. He passed the bar exam. And you just see her go into full praise and worship. Like, she was excited. She was screaming and happy. And then she just goes into full praise and worship because this was something that her son had made the commitment to his father about. And I guess I should say their eldest son, who was her her son and his stepson. So, and that's how they described it in the articles that I read. But he had made a commitment that he would become a lawyer, and now he's working in law. He's an entertainment lawyer. So kind of matching, his education with his father's legacy. And so it's amazing to me what women can do to persevere for their children.
Oh, yes.
she speaks about, uh, in the interview she did, they were talking about her being pruned and
Mm-hmm.
how she was being pruned, and so many relationships that existed when her husband was alive were severed. And, she felt alone, but she said God told her, it's me and you, daughter. This is the
Yeah.
journey I want to take you on. And that just, it's encouraging, even though it can be lonely, it is encouraging because you're in the hands of the Father. And the way she describes her journey with God, what she was able to get or receive during that time, just reassurance of who he called her to be. And, that's what I took away from it, was that she's being reassured of who he's called her to be. She is not, or was not ever, just put on this earth to be Mrs. LaShawn Daniels. She is,
Right.
April Daniels, a child of God, a woman of God, who has a ministry, who has a purpose, and she's living that out. They have what they call is these girlfriend, this tour where she goes on, and they go into cities and they have like these huge girlfriend slumber parties, and where women come and they connect, and there's just so many, like I said earlier, so many different things that she's doing. And what's so amazing about Anisha, it's for others. She's just doing so much to give back to others and to encourage others.
Mm-hmm.
And she's being encouraged along the way, but it's a blessing to me. It makes me so hopeful about what's to come and what God has planned, and what He'll birth out of, really what has been a really tough, year. So
Yeah. It's the beauty to it's from ashes to beauty. Um, I I think the same thing about Mrs. Vanessa
mm-hmm.
Bryant. I looked into her spirituality. I'm like, how is this woman able to be this strong? How is she doing this every day?
Mm-hmm.
How is she showing up on these social media platforms and in these huge venues? And is she speaks to her faith. She talks about prayer. She talks about attending church. And I was reading an article about her, and it says she started out and grew up in a Catholic family, but later became a Christian because of, her husband. He played a significant role in that, and in her conversion to Christianity. And she identifies that faith, that being a Christian, that prayer, attending church, that is what has gotten her through some of the toughest time. She credited her Christian faith to giving her the strength to deal with her husband's untimely death. And, this article talks about that and talks about her journey to Christianity. And I just think there's a consistency in that. Whether we're talking to our Aunt Linda or our husbands or friends that we haven't yet seen on the show, and loved ones, all the way down to our SHEROES, there is something to be said about faith. There's something to be said about spirituality when you're grieving. I don't think we've spoken with anyone that has not identified the Father, their Christian beliefs, as a major impact in how they go through grief. Whether they believe they're going to get over it or to the other side, they identify God as the source of that strength. And that is a common theme from episode to episode, topic to topic. And that's powerful to me.
Yeah,
That's powerful.
I can't say it any better, sister. There's no denying, that, at least in what we've experienced, and definitely what our grief SHEROES have experienced as well.
Mm-hmm.
Mrs. April Daniels talked about the same thing, the prayer, laying on her face. She talked about laying on her face in some of the interviews that she'd done. Just, staying in that space with God. And so, listen, it's not rocket science to me, right? It seems simple, very practical to me. But we're not naive to think that everybody who's listening is a Christian. Mm-hmm. And again, like we say every single episode, we're not experts either. We're just sharing our story, and we're sharing what we experienced and what we've seen that has been helpful for us. And these are just two of many women who are going, I would say, probably still going through the grieving process. But again, have found a way to really rely on God to get them through it and be able to help others. And so we understand that some people, may be in a different space, right? You may be in a space of depression, or you may be in a space where you need more professional help. And so I encourage those of you who are maybe seeking a therapist to consider BetterHelp. I personally used BetterHelp earlier on in my grieving process, and it was extremely beneficial for me. Again, my counselor or my therapist that was assigned to me, she was absolutely amazing. And she helped me through some of the darkest days earlier on in my grief. But we also know that there are other ways to seek out help versus online. And so Chrystal Harris is another resource that we talk about every single episode almost. And so, sister, how can people get in contact with Chrystal?
Chrystal is, you can find her under Sound Mind Health Services. It is a LLC. You can search for her on all your social media platforms. She's on Instagram, Facebook. You can also find her on your local website, on your websites. Just type it in that Google search, type it in your search engine for your social media platforms. And we'll try to put a link down in the comments or somewhere where you can have access to her as well. And also, don't forget to pray. If you pray, pray. Mm-hmm. You worship. And also your network of friends. What I see from Vanessa Bryant is she's with some of her best friends. She has people around her, not just her daughters, not just her family, but other people that love and care about her. Mm-hmm. And she is busy handling the legacy, protecting the legacy of her husband and her daughter. And so I think all of those things are helpful. We're seeing that over and over again.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for joining us. And thank you, sister, for being on this journey with me. My prayer is that these episodes are helping you to go through your grieving process, or they're helping you to help someone else to get through their grieving process, and to ultimately reach the other side where there is joy. So listen, have a wonderful week, and we will see you next week.
See you next week.